Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday. It is September 11th. It is 2025. Might as well add that as well. And what a show we have for you today. My goodness. How is it not Friday? This is how is it not Saturday? I feel like the week should be over again. I'm exhausted. There's a lot to catch up on. You know what the major stories of the day are. You know what the anniversary of the day is, or what today is the anniversary of. We're going to discuss all of that. You know what else is looming out there, and we're going to be discussing some of those things. Jeffrey Epstein still in the news, things still dropping. Bloomberg has a big feature piece about, I guess somehow they got access to. I don't know if I read enough into the detail of the piece to see how they got, what do they mean by we got access to? A Yahoo email account that Epstein used, apparently one of many. It's not comprehensive or anything like that. And it mostly covers years of the early 2000s. And apparently there's no solid evidence, of his documenting his own activity or the activities of others. But it's some behind-the-scenes information about how he ran things and how he felt about things and the things he was doing and the people he was abusing in some cases. So certainly interesting, and in the context of the continued drip and refusal of the Trump administration so far to make any serious or meaningful release of whatever information the DOJ is still sitting on. That's a major story that continues into today. Now, of course, September 11th, remembrances, of which there are many. And, of course, the death of Charlie Kirk just yesterday, and the very muddled and unfortunate media, social media, and professional media, traditional media reactions to yesterday's events. I don't know. I don't have that much to say. I don't think that we really have to wait, I think, sometime before we deal too deeply with what Charlie Kirk's situation represents. But there have been a couple of different and divergent schools of thought in how to deal with it. And I'm not in the school of nothing can be said ill of the dead, for one thing. Charlie Kirk was not a good person. Charlie Kirk was a bad person and a bad actor and a bad influence on America and its politics, and it was on purpose. And that's and he met the physical limitations of that ability to enter into the realm of politics and tell people that you wanted them gone, that you wanted them eliminated. It's a dangerous thing to do. And Charlie Kirk lived his life, such as it was, on the principle of what the F are you going to do about it? So, yeah, he just thought, I guess, that most people, whether they were his friends or his enemies, were too wimpy, essentially, to put a stop to it. Besides, after all, he was just asking questions. He was engaging in politics and just exchanging ideas. And then some of the ideas caught up with him. And, I've seen some very bad takes on it from all angles. There's no shortage of bad takes. There are a couple of good ones. Greg Dworkin is here. We can talk this through. We've been through this a number of times. And by the way, let me also add that we are under the cloud of a school shooting as well as the school shooting that killed Charlie Kirk. I mean, that was a school campus shooting. And interesting that he would, I guess we'll say interesting is all we can say. He would fall victim to something like that. But there was a school shooting in Colorado yesterday that now getting very little attention, as are, by the way, previous political murders that went unremarked upon entirely by the president and the Republican leadership in Washington and around the country, but who now insist that we all engage in loud wailing and gnashing of teeth over the Charlie Cook murder. Charlie Cook, oh my gosh, no, Charlie Kirk murder, which, well, that would really be something. Maybe now is time to bring in Greg Dworkin before this gets totally out of hand. I don't know if maybe fanfare isn't the thing for today, Greg. I don't know.
That'd be okay if we didn't do it.
All right. That's fine. Okay, so time to start discussing many things. And Charlie Kirk doesn't have to be first on the list. I just want to acknowledge, yep.
Well, he won't be.
Obviously, I heard everything. Okay, good.
We are going to do September 11th because that's real heroes.
Isn't that really where we're supposed to be focusing our attention? Yes.
On this day, and again, for those of you listening around the world and overseas and, and on the left coast and such, I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Yonkers, New York City suburb.
Maybe that's the fanfare.
And the roots here in Connecticut, in the Danbury area, which is only 50 minutes away from New York. There are people who live here and commute and work there. So the New York roots are very deep. And just to give you an example of that and why I bring that up, on September 11th, a friend of mine who was a paramedic at our local hospital, Danbury Hospital, saw the first hit on the World Trade Center building. There were two. But at the first one, as soon as he saw it, he hopped in his car and drove down there. And he wanted to help. And, of course, the second building fell on him. So that was one of the several people I knew who was involved in that day. I knew a firefighter, brother of a social worker friend of mine who I work with, who was running up the stairs at the time the building fell, so that wasn't a good outcome. And I also knew a fellow, his brother was a doctor and worked with me, and we were watching the buildings on that day and saw the first plane hit.
You were just watching the buildings at what?
We were on the floor making rounds. TV was on, and
you saw the news.
The plane hit, and so we saw the news.
I see. All right.
And I turned to him,
gazing at the buildings,
and I said, "Doesn't your brother work there?" And he picked up the phone and called, and it was never answered. I mean, those are the sorts of things that stories that all New Yorkers have. My sister,
New Jerseyans too.
New Jerseyans too. My sister, who's a New Jerseyan, New Yorker, born and bred, but lived in New Jersey.
Okay.
Was working on Lower Manhattan when the buildings came down, and she was covered with white ash. You know the pictures. I mean, she looked like a Kiss concert.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
Was boat lifted off the tip of the island. To New Jersey to get home.
Yeah.
Because all travel was shut down, all travel. But on that day, and again, some people know this, some people don't know this, but there was a spontaneous boat lift.
Yes.
A Spanish Armada that was, all the party boats and the tugs and every boat that was in the water immediately turned to the tip of Manhattan and started getting people out. It was just an amazing thing. It was actually organized by the Coast Guard, but many people came there even before they got the call.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks made a video about it some years later.
Oh.
And it's on YouTube. It's called Boat Lift.
Oh, that's
and
okay.
I watch it every September 11th because, again, this is one of the people who rescued my sister. And it features a fellow, and this is one of the videos you're going to play, who was captain of the Amberjack 5, which was a party boat. It was a floating restaurant. You could hire it and, have parties.
But
among the heroism, another reason why I love this video is just the New York accent.
Okay.
So I was wondering if you could just play the first minute.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen this one. I didn't realize it was a Tom Hanks video. Okay, let's roll a minute or so, and it's silent at the beginning. Dramatic wind and sound effects.
I thought I was watching a movie.
Oh, I need to turn this up.
Towering Inferno at first. And then I looked real close, and I noticed it was the World Trade Center.
That is something.
I was compelled because I'm a type of person that can't stand by and watch other people suffer. And to me, they were suffering. They wanted to get off the island. And there was no way for them to get off the island other than the water. And I had noticed when I was watching the television, I saw a lot of, the ferries going up into the slips and taking people off. I said, fine, we could do the same thing. I could take people on my boat, get in there, take them where they have to go. And that's what we did.
Dramatic music, certainly. Okay, that's our glimpse into the accent. That is a pretty heavy accent.
No, it's not a heavy accent. Everybody else has the accent. This guy just talks the way like normal people speak.
Yeah. And so now, does this get into more of the boat lift detail? It's a 12-minute video.
But he's talking about his motivation. He says if you don't have time to play it, he says, listen, my wife said I was not your maniac. What are you going to do? And he says, well, but I got to do what I got to do.
Oh, let's roll a little bit more of it if you like. I mean,
I love it.
It's September 11th right now. We can do this. But I didn't know how much.
This is worth spending some time on. So go ahead, roll some more.
Let's do it.
Tom Hanks narrating, by the way.
Okay. Boat lift. All right.
On the morning of September 11th, when the towers came down, millions of people ran for safety.
Dust.
Hundreds of thousands of them ran south to the water's edge. That's when they realized that Manhattan is indeed an island, and that they were trapped.
They were feeling helpless, and that's the worst feeling in the world. What was a person on the ground going to do? Buildings were down. There were people laying under the rubble of the building. Firemen, civilians. My wife was there, and I turned around. I says, I've got to go do something. Just like that. And she looked at me. She says, what are you going to do, you maniac? I says, I'm going to take the amberjack up into the city and help. She says, but what if they're attacked again? I says, well, then that's something I have to live with. I says, I have to do what I have to do. I says, and nobody can stop me right now. Even if I save one person or I rescue one person, that's one person less that will suffer and die.
You could stop it there.
All right. Well,
so they just go into the details, but
I recommend
there are details, and I sent you at the very end of our list there. It was kind of an add-on. This is from the American Maritime Partnership, September 11, 2019. The Unsung Tale of 9/11's Maritime Rescuers. And again, this is a story not necessarily well known by a lot of people, but that boat lift, including the Amberjack 5, rescued 500,000 people.
500,000? That's crazy.
Yes, more than Dunkirk.
Well, yeah.
There was an incredible evacuation that day of Lower Manhattan, and basically they all went to Staten Island and New Jersey.
Yeah. Well, some unfortunate people, did go to Staten Island. That's true. They made it welcome that day, I think. There was maybe one of Staten Island's shining moments, I suppose.
It was one of Staten Island's shining moments. But, the point is that the boat people, are the unsung heroes. And so if you're gonna remember 9/11, remember them.
Yes. And remember what maybe you want to keep a special place in your mind and in your heart for the people who needed rescuing by boat that day to get to safety, rather than maybe you don't always want to be turning away other people who are attempting to reach safety and a better life by boat.
Yeah, they weren't screened.
Yeah.
People didn't ask where are you from before you got on the boat.
Like if you're a citizen, you can't get on the boat.
Yeah, you didn't have to show your passport or any of that nonsense.
Right.
So,
this is only a green card. Get off my boat.
Exactly. That was a better day. So nobody asked no questions. Just get on.
Yeah. Tom Hanks, by the way, also very much in the news these days. This sort of thing he produced, and of course now I'm thinking of the other miraculous rescue off the river story, and including some action by the local ferries, and Sully with the plane that had to make a landing, emergency landing in the
Hudson
river,
belly up, and
But that, and then I'm thinking
Stellenberger.
he's in the news because he was set to get some sort of award at a ceremony at West Point at the military
Alumni
academy,
Association.
Alumni Association, for making films like there are several of the war films that he made, and so
not just
Saving
Private Ryan, but also
Band of Brothers,
Brothers.
and what's the one the
And Forrest Gump, where he was also soldier.
I guess that's true. But basically an award for his upholding of, American ideals and honoring the servicemen and women of the country through film. And somehow, I guess, one, Trump and company got wind of it. Two, somehow have in their head, no, Tom Hanks is actually a terrible anti-American type communist person, and this thing needs to be stopped. And he leans on him, and they yoink the award, and the whole thing goes down the drain over I don't know what. Maybe Tom Hanks might have said something like, I don't actually agree with the president on something. And so there you go. No award for you. The whole Saving Private Ryan legacy, the documentary legacy like this, he's made tremendous efforts, and Tom Hanks, I think, pretty much universally beloved, except, I don't know, somewhere under the rocks.
Well,
the Trump people have taught people differently. Tom Hanks is terrible and evil. I don't know how you get there.
But it's just a reminder that whether you're talking about Charlie Kirk or whether you're talking about, Tom Hanks and his treatment, the stuff that the Trump administration does is not popular. Trump is not popular. Yes, he's got his supporters, but overall, he's not popular. But, there was a shooting yesterday, so we do have to talk about it.
Okay.
Wrote that up. So at Evergreen High School,
to do that.
that
one. Yes, I did
year-old
mean
shooter is dead from self-inflicted gunshot wounds after shooting two other students. One died. One is one's in critical condition. Sorry, the only one that died was the student who shot himself. Another was discharged. And
is that right? Okay, good.
So the only one that died was the shooter, but he's 16 years old. I have no idea how he got a gun. It was a revolver.
America. Yeah.
And when law enforcement got there, they didn't have to discharge their own guns. That's in the story from the local public radio story.
Okay.
But between Aurora and others, Colorado has had its share of issues. So,
my goodness.
You won't hear about very much in the news because the other guy that got shot is dominating the news, and that's Charlie Kirk. And I have to tell you, it's a terrible thing he was shot. It's not good. I don't want to hear stories about any, what if Hitler were shot early? Wouldn't that be, stupid stuff? I don't think anybody's really saying that, but the right wing is going nuts about pretending they are. I will say, though, it feels to me like when George Wallace got shot. I'm that old.
Yeah? Okay.
Bad guy, not a good thing to shoot him. Bad move. Don't do that.
Yeah, well, bad for everybody in terms of, certainly everyone now worries rightly about blowback and heading into some sort of violent spiral. And then, there's also just the flat, okay, suppose this never spirals out of control anywhere. Still, you don't do this. This is beyond anything you should be
there's so many undercurrents here. Let me just give you one example.
Yeah.
I understand that Matt Schlapp and Trump and everybody else immediately wants to blame the left. I have no idea what they're talking about. But I will say this. Charlie Kirk, just as a point of information, was feuding with Nick Fuentes because Kirk, as a very ideological conservative, happened to be supportive of Israel. Nick Fuentes, as a neo-Nazi, was
that does
genetically opposed to supporting Israel.
Yes.
So, who would be mad at Charlie Kirk? It would be irresponsible not to speculate since we know nothing.
That is true.
And we don't know who was out there. I'm simply saying you really have to wait and see what happens before you start.
There are even competing theories
quote,
out there.
Drawing lessons, end quote.
Mm-hmm. Yes, everybody's got a guess and everybody's got a theory, but that's really, I don't know. The only point I'll make is that there are actually several such theories, some of which actually have some sound grounding, there are a lot of people that don't like and didn't like and hated Charlie Kirk, and not the majority of them. I don't think necessarily, in terms of the numbers of theories floating around there, that there's actually more theories for right-wing or co-right-wing, co-conspirator blowback than left-wing.
I just alluded to one, but I'm just simply saying, it's an interesting phenomenon. I'm talking to my locals here.
Many people dislike him intensely, and
yes, many people disliked him intensely, but even more people had no idea who the heck he was.
Yes, that's true too, and and that's why it's actually, I think, a little bit even additionally upsetting. Naturally, many of you have probably already seen. I don't have anything to say about what Ezra Klein had written about it. I haven't read it. It looks dumb. The headline is disastrous. I'm a little worried about the fact that most people have no idea who Charlie Kirk is, and that the major newspapers are telling you he was a brilliant orator or a voice of, a contentious voice, but a leader, and he was a very rabble-rousing and dangerous person, and
right. And again, that's why I thought of George Wallace. I don't want to hear, how popular Wallace was or what a great orator he was. That's not the point. The point is what he stood for.
Right.
And throughout all of this, I just think it's fascinating that most people don't know who Charlie Kirk is, and they have no idea why some flags are at half staff for him, but let's say not the Minnesota lawmakers who were shot a week ago.
Or like 9/11, perhaps, might be a good time to think about.
Well, the fact that today is 9/11, I'm just saying I'm leading off with the Amberjack 5 and not with Charlie Kirk. That's all I'm saying.
I'm sorry I dragged you there, but it did have to be mentioned. But yes, thank you for starting with the proper subject, I think.
So the New York Times says, social media falls into well-worn grooves after Charlie Kirk's death. If you want to both sides it, you can. A mix of sympathy and blame proliferated in messages posted from figures across the political spectrum. The sympathy was everybody. The blame was from the right, but let's both sides it. And I have another video I'd like you to play, because somebody was talking to AOC about this.
Oh, yeah, probably hoping she would say something that they could... make a
she's
sensation.
She's very good on her feet, and so if that's what you wanted,
you're in the wrong place.
And
pick somebody else. Okay,
let's just show that by playing it, because you can't see it. This is radio.
I mean, I think what has just transpired is tremendously disturbing. It is the latest evolution and instance of political violence in the United States, and it must end.
Congresswoman, what message do you have to your fellow lawmakers regarding the political environment? What message do you have to your fellow lawmakers regarding the political environment and the rhetoric that has been put out in the media?
Beyond rhetoric, we need to talk about action, and we need to talk about, yes, there are words, but most importantly, we are in a job of leadership. We are in a job of action. We are in a role and a position where the American people are looking to us to do something about this. And every single day, people are dying due to gun violence in America, and every single day there are people in this building that continue to vote against doing anything. They vote against universal background checks. They continue to support legislation and also remove any way to block the mentally ill, to block extremists, to block people with histories and records of domestic violence from getting guns in their hands. So are we going to do something about this or not? We have a political assassination that happened at the same time as a school shooting where children are dying on the same day, a week after a shooting at a Catholic school where children were gunned down while praying. Are we going to do something, or are we going to argue over rhetoric? That is my question about this. We have to pass gun safety legislation and stop this.
What one congresswoman was saying, was yelling at Republicans, and it was Democrats' fault. Democrats did this. That's what we're saying.
I mean,
Anna Paulina Luna, by the way, I think is the one he's talking. I think that's Manu
and
Raza
Nancy Mace.
Nancy Mace
started
it.
Anna Paulina Luna was just answering Nancy Mace.
Yes, I happened to see that it was Anna Paulina Luna that was the first to resort to profanity on the House floor in blaming Democrats. You see, Nancy Mace simply said Democrats did this, whereas Anna Paulina Luna said effing Democrats did this. So
right. In that
seems
order.
By the way, it was difficult to concentrate on it. This is a true press gaggle. There's right behind her another member of Congress, likewise answering questions from another gaggle of reporters. I don't recognize them offhand, and I couldn't really tell what he was saying, but it may very well be the case that within feet there are 5 different members of Congress surrounded by 10 reporters apiece, one saying we need to do something about guns in this country, and the other
saying we need to do something about Democrats.
Right. Yeah. What we need is more guns, less Democrats. Take that how you will, but this is war.
Is this gaggle taking place on the traditional, quote, Capitol steps?
Yes, I think it's what it looks like. The shot is not wide enough to tell, but I think it looks like there are people. I think I see a step or two, and there are people on different levels there. So unless they're all 7-footers, I think they're standing on.
It's a really nice stage, and that's where they always use it.
Right, the east front of the Capitol, the steps, right. The place you would let's say storm the building from if you disagreed with the outcome of a presidential election, just theoretically. Okay, we're coming up on break time here, but there's still a good 2 minutes left in her commentary. I don't know what is in the second half.
You got the important part. I mean, it's just more of her being articulate and answering on her feet questions that many other members of Congress would not be very good at.
Right. Well, all right. Well, we're glad that she got out there and
I don't know the answer to the question you asked, but because I have to say something, let me just give you my talking points on why it's Democrats' fault.
Oh. Yeah, right.
I mean, generally that's how they answer.
Right. So that was.
Whereas she actually addresses the question you asked.
Well, it's certainly an easier answer to give, and it was probably handed out on index cards to Republican members of Congress as well. But yeah, we'll get into all of that. Continue with this in just a minute. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, hey, welcome back everybody to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Nerds Radio. Ty, what, and where? We're just discussing.
Well, you see, I have this story that I had pulled. You may know Kash Patel announced they had the guy, and then they didn't have the guy, and then he announced they had the guy, and then they didn't have the guy, and the guy is still loose.
That's one of the most amazing parts about all of this.
Because Kash Patel is a jerk, and the thing is, the FBI actually has some really competent people working there, but he fired them all.
Yeah, and I did see somebody commenting, and I think maybe like Asha Rangappa, maybe somebody who is steeped in this sort of thing, saying, I honestly do not know if the FBI still has the capacity to actually investigate this shooting and draw a real conclusion, which is a little bit dangerous given, let's say, Kash Patel's proclivity for saying things like, we got the guy, and then it's not the guy. It doesn't bother him very much that it isn't the guy. So that in the end, they could just say, what if it was a really politically advantageous guy we decided to get?
Well, it's like right out of High Anxiety, Mel Brooks, I got it. I don't got it. I got it. I don't got it.
It was an astonishing thing. I'm sure it must have been very disconcerting, by the way, for the vast majority of America who either didn't know who Charlie Kirk was or didn't, whatever, to come to this and look for information from the director of the FBI and then to find out, well, as somebody else put it too, this is kind of what happens when you just say, let's make a bombastic podcaster director of the FBI. Somebody who is used to going to the microphone before there are facts developed. Wouldn't that be a great FBI leader? And this is what you get. And so twice America would have turned to the director of the FBI for real information, and twice he rug pulls this whole thing because he's so anxious to make a political story out of it. Yeah, I don't know that they're ever going to get to the bottom of it in a real way. They'll offer you a conclusion, and you'll have no real reason for believing it. Okay.
It's difficult, but this parallel story takes on even more import. This was in the Washington Post yesterday. FBI leaders allege in lawsuit they were unlawfully fired over political loyalty.
Yeah.
The former acting director says a Trump administration official asked a series of questions, including who did you vote for?
Yes.
Before he was briefly named the FBI's acting director early this year, Brian Driscoll says he got a call from a Trump administration official who peppered him with a series of pointed questions that appeared to be a loyalty test. Who did you vote for? When did you start supporting President Trump? Have you voted for a Democrat in the last 5 elections? Do you agree the FBI who stormed Mar-a-Lago should be held accountable? Driscoll, promoted to the temporary post despite refusing to answer, detailed the episode in a federal lawsuit Wednesday in which he and 2 other former senior FBI officials allege they're fired by Kash Patel, the eventual FBI director. They didn't put incompetent in that sentence, but they could have, for unlawful and politically motivated reasons that often appeared to be in response to social media posts from far-right critics. So you could stick Laura Loomer in there if you want.
I did.
Patel not only acted unlawfully, but deliberately chose to prioritize politicizing the FBI over protecting the American people. When you fire the competent people, you're left with incompetence, and that's how come the FBI got him, but they don't got him. They got him, but they don't got him. And they keep doing that because they fired all the competent people.
That is true. And, if you're one of those, I don't know how you'd be listening to this show, but if you're one of those weirdos that just thinks everybody at the FBI is incompetent, it is also illegal to fire incompetent people for political reasons. You can fire them for the incompetence.
Well, it's among the really despicable things that have happened this week.
Yes, it is. And I guess it's just the legal department of the newspaper being cautious. Like, it appeared to be a loyalty test. Who did you vote for?
Right. That's it. Back to our old buddy Charlie Kirk here.
Yeah.
This is from the New York Times, and I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs. The reaction on social media fell into well-worn grooves.
Oh, yes, right.
Now, again, listen to this. Not just in terms of what was going on social media, as if the Times is a neutral person telling you what's going on, but also see how they spin this. Prayers for the victim's life, condemnation of political violence, and sharply partisan takes. Some on the left, compare left and right, would you? Some on the left sent sympathetic messages with notes of support for Mr. Kirk's wife and children, while decrying the scourge of guns.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's normal.
Well, that actually happened. That's true. Other messages called attention to Mr. Kirk's steadfast support for gun rights, including a resurfaced quote from a 2023 interview. The quote is, "It's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year." I heard this on NPR this morning.
Yeah.
So that we can have a Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights, Mr. Kirk, 31, had said. Other quotes from Mr. Kirk's social media feed suggested that gun control was useless, and those quotes were reposted by online users.
What? How dare they?
Exactly.
That was also just reposted by the New York Times, of course. But on
the other side, some conservatives condemn such commentary while also assigning blame for the killing. That's completely equivalent to what happened on the left, correct?
Yeah. No.
A post from the Utah Republican Party decried hate violence and evil being peddled by radical extremists.
Well, all right. I guess if you don't say what side they're on.
I'm trying to understand why this is a balanced discussion.
No. Well,
one side said,
doesn't matter
this is
if it's
terrible, I'm
balanced.
sorry he died. By the way, he said these things which in fact are true.
Yeah.
And the other side is making stuff up, assigning blame,
Mm-hmm.
and mislabeling, people who don't like Charlie Kirk as radical extremists.
Yes.
Unfounded, no reason, and somehow or other, the New York Times is calling this. You see, both sides have these issues on social media with what's going on.
Well,
Through that,
there are people who are weird all over the place. This part is true, but yeah, I mean, apparently it was a huge project yesterday, and there's nothing to be done about it. But there was a huge project yesterday to try to make sure that the right wing saw that the vast majority of what I guess you would characterize as left wing response to the shooting was exactly what was described. People saying, hey, look, I disagreed with the guy intensely, and I thought he was an actual terrible person, but this is not done. We don't abide by this. And you can demonstrate that all day long. And it doesn't matter anyway, because first of all, they'll use AI to make up a profile of a person saying something. You don't even have to do that. You can eventually find somebody who's just such a provocateur, and whether they're leftist or not, you can just imagine they just make up whatever they need to make it look that way. But you can find somebody with left-leaning sympathies who will say something that's embarrassing, but it's, again, it's cherry picking at the very worst. And there's a whole body of political commentators who have audiences and are invited to the Trump White House and are given exclusives and binders of Epstein files that are useless or whatever, but who have audiences who, had the most awful things to say or cheered on the attack on one of the most famous instances of this. A lot of these people calling for the heads of liberal radical leftists for not saying that Charlie Kirk ought to have been canonized or whatever.
Yeah, he should be on Mount Rushmore. I mean, how could you do that? In fact,
along with
what's his name, Matthew Schlapp,
yes.
An idiot in his own right, was interviewed about this. And he said, Charlie Kirk, was wonderful, and he was this, and he really ought to be put on a pedestal, paraphrasing him. And it's all the fault of leftists who always do political violence here. And the commentator said, well, what about those Minnesota lawmakers?
That's one example,
who were shot and killed. Right. And Schlapp lost it and went nuts and started screaming at them. How dare you compare Charlie Kirk to these other people? That's ridiculous. How dare you? I won't stand for it.
Charlie Kirk was a 31-year-old nobody. I mean, he had a big audience, it's true, but he was never elected to anything.
And I think the point Schlapp was making, although it was his intended point / not intended point, you were supposed to get the message but not realize that this is what he was purveying to you, is that we need Charlie Kirk to be a martyr.
Yes. Very badly, and they're doing everything they can to get it. But lots of side-by-side posting, by the way, of how dare you, Riargo Bargle, along with, by the way, here's a screenshot of your joke about Paul Pelosi having his head bashed in with a hammer. How hilarious that was to you.
So, that's as much as our friend Tom Hanks said on Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that.
That's fair. Okay. And we wanted to return to
Let's talk procedure. Let's talk something really interesting.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, sure. Yes. Good. It's a tough transition, this one.
Let me explain to new listeners here. David is the procedural expert on The Amateur. I ask him questions and he explains things. And,
I do my best.
I like it, and he gets annoyed because it's a waste of his time. But I don't know these stuff.
No, it isn't. It's fun. But sometimes I don't know exactly what.
It sounds like you're having fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Okay. I think.
And again, a reminder: this is how typical David and Greg breakfast conversations have gone.
Yes,
for the last,
I can't wait to get the emails
years.
About how we interrupted each other. We know.
Yes, of course. We know. All right. This is from the Hill.
Yes.
Schumer ambushes Republicans with amendment to force vote on Epstein files. So this is going to be our Jeffrey Epstein section.
I like his new glasses, Schumer.
Yeah. John Thune was really annoyed.
Okay. Good.
They filed an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act to direct Attorney General Pam Bondi to make public all unclassified records, documents, and communications related to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. He offered his amendment
Senate can do this.
to Senate Armed Services Committee Chair Roger Wicker's substitute amendment to the annual defense bill, which Thune hopes to pass before Congress leaves town. But the thing is...
I say because they want to leave town for Rosh Hashanah recess, it says.
Yes. Schumer took advantage of Republicans not immediately filing the amendment tree to the defense authorization measure. In other words, Republicans didn't want this amendment even being offered.
Well, no.
Thune is the person who directs the schedule. And somehow or other, by not immediately filing the amendment tree to the measure, that allowed Schumer to sneak in there and get this amendment in, even though Thune didn't want him to. That's the part I'm kind of fuzzy on. I don't understand how that works.
Okay. Well, it's
How
filling.
is Schumer allowed to even get up and be recognized and offer this thing?
Well, he's a prioritized personage as floor leader for the Democrats. Certainly, and the only person
only
who
Schumer can
ranks
do this.
Other people could have done it if they were, if the other side is unprepared. Anybody can get away with anything. First of all, this is just an interesting thing that could only be done.
To recognize him?
Well, they would only know not to recognize you if they knew what you were up to. It wouldn't be unusual for another senator to ask to be recognized, but I was going to say, first of all, you should recognize right off the bat, this is something you can only do in the Senate, generally speaking.
This is the Senate thing, right.
The idea being, if you're wondering, well, they're debating the National Defense Authorization Act. What relevance has Jeffrey Epstein got to this? And the answer is none, but it doesn't matter. What about germaneness? Well, now you're thinking about when the Senate is operating under different rules like reconciliation or restricted bills like that. Otherwise, the Senate kind of has it wide open, and you can offer amendments on just about anything. The way the Senate controls what amendments can be brought up, in the House we know what it is. It goes to the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee decides what amendments will be in order and what won't. The Senate is much more wide open, but there are procedures. And filling the amendment tree is the way that you handle it, and it's at the root of all the complaints that we used to hear in years past. I don't know. Nobody asks for this anymore. When is the Senate going to return to regular order? Remember that?
That's funny.
Always yelling about that.
There's a comment about that.
Oh, okay.
Majority Leader Thune has pledged to bring regular order back to the Senate
did,
by
in a
letting
way.
rank and file members have more opportunity to offer and debate amendments.
Yes.
Thune told reporters he supports full transparency for the Epstein-related documents, but stopped short of saying whether the Senate would vote on legislation. In other words, I'm all for full transparency. I want to be on record about that. Well, what about empowering legislation to do that which you just said? Well, no, you can't do that.
I would like people to do it voluntarily. I don't like. I'm not a big government person, I guess. So the way they control what amendments can and can't be offered in the Senate is filling the amendment tree, and it starts with the rule that the general practice being you can offer any amendment you want, but there are rules about how it's done, and when you're considering a bill, essentially you read them by sections. And if you've been watching C-SPAN and gotten bored at this part, it's usually because they're actually reading the bill. Now, very often they say, I make a unanimous consent request to dispense with the reading of this section. But the rules to prevent total chaos are pretty minimal. And you read a bill by sections and say, all right, well, consider amendments, but only to each section, just so everything's not completely out of control. So Section 5 comes up. Amendments to Section 5 are in order, under regular order. However, if you want to prevent people from offering amendments like this one, or, whatever ambush amendment you might think is coming, or any amendment at all, you just want to control things, one of the other basic rules is that there are no third-degree amendments allowed. What's that mean? Here comes the legislation. Section 5 is coming. I have an amendment to Section 5. That's a first-degree amendment. You can also say, I have an amendment to that guy's amendment. Or sometimes people say, I have an amendment to my own amendment. I've thought of something new. Or someone made a good point. I want to add it. That's a second-degree amendment, amending an amendment.
And I think that's what this was. From what I read here, it sounds like
probably.
Roger Wicker had an amendment and Schumer wanted to amend the amendment.
Right. And so then if
so that
somebody
would make
says
it second degree.
Right. And I want to amend the amendment to the amendment. No, third degree. That's wrong. That's the tree they're talking about. So you can see them filling in, making a diagram so that you don't lose track of who's amending what. And it looks like a tree, and that's the amendment tree. So one of the tricks they've developed is, well, what if you don't want anybody to amend anything? One of the things you do there is you use your priority recognition if you are shepherding a bill through the Senate and you're the committee chair, for instance, and you have priority recognition. Priority recognition behind you goes to the minority leadership. So they can get a chance. Usually they get a chance to speak to a bill as it's coming up. And one of the ways you can block all amendments is basically you say this. All right, here's my bill. Now I'm going to amend not a section of it, but the whole thing. And what you offer is a substitute amendment that's essentially substitutes for the entire text of the bill as brought to the floor, usually with the same text and maybe a word or two changed, or maybe you've thought of something and you add it in, but I'm amending the entire bill. So now there's already a first-degree amendment covering the entire bill. Then you offer an amendment to your own amendment that does the same thing. Again, the entire text of the bill plus one more thing. So now there's a second-degree amendment covering the entire body of the bill. That fills the amendment tree, and no more amendments are in order.
So
and
then
that
you
makes
freeze
senators
everybody
extremely
out. And that's
mad.
why you have to negotiate
Right.
with your partners across the aisle as to what you're going to do and not do.
Yeah.
And that's what Thune was in the middle of doing when Schumer sneaks in and gives this second-degree amendment that gets in there before they have a chance to do all of that and block them out.
Oops. Yeah.
And so they're mad. They say this is war. This is a hostile
This
amendment.
now is war. Yesterday's other thing was war. There's a lot of war going on. Chicago's a war.
But I'm thinking about this. Again, I'm a layperson. So I'm trying to flip it and think about this the other way. Let's say the Democrats are the majority.
Let's say it.
And they are working out with Republicans an amendment tree to their bill, which essentially would legalize the idea of background checks universal background checks.
Yeah.
So clearly something Democrats want.
Yes.
Okay. And Tommy Tuberville stands up and says, I have this second-degree amendment to put Donald Trump on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
And also, suggest that he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. And Democrats look at this and say, we don't want this garbage in our bill. We have an important bill to do.
Yeah.
How did you get in there and do that? And I'm just thinking to myself, in that case, regular order doesn't look so great.
No, it doesn't. Although in a situation like that, that particular situation, I think they'd probably say, all right.
Go ahead, vote on the bill, you jerk.
We'll vote on this amendment. You lose. It's generally speaking what they're looking to keep out are what they would consider gotcha stuff. Gotcha amendments or motions to recommit would come this way in the House. Right. They're bills designed or an amendment designed to disrupt, stand everything on its head.
Could add a line, right?
And
he can amend his own amendment and say, I also want to condemn Chuck Schumer for being a Democrat.
Yeah, you could do that.
And then, okay, you want to vote on that? You're on record for supporting Chuck Schumer. I just want you to know,
Yeah, right. It's when
garbage time.
When the leadership thinks, all right, well, this is actually, this is stupid and we could defeat it, but this is meant to get us on record on voting on something stupid and extraneous.
Right.
Then you
However,
try to block
Chuck
it out.
Schumer did all of this. Thank you for bringing it up, so we don't lose sight, because Chuck Schumer did this to get the Republicans on record as not going along with Thune's stated intent to be transparent. He wanted Republicans on the record for saying, no, I don't want the Epstein files released.
Yeah, or at least
which is less important in the Senate, but that's Schumer's job, and more important in the House. Because overall, there's many other things that influence whether or not you vote for a senator, but Epstein alone could kill the candidacy of somebody in the House.
Yeah.
It's just the way it works, because of size of constituency and the fact that all of them are up for re-election and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So Schumer had the intent of getting all these guys on record, and it turns out Josh Hawley and Rand Paul voted with the Democrats.
Yeah, that's what they're after.
51-49, and it wasn't 50-50 because Lisa Murkowski changed her vote at the last minute under pressure.
She's so strange.
I know, she's so odd. My Alaska friends are saying we don't understand it either. It's really weird.
What do the fish say?
Maybe she's really, concerned about her safety.
Yeah, well, she is, and she does say as much. But yeah, all right. Well, what can I tell you? She's a highly inconsistent person. I don't know what drives it. I don't know what motivates it. There's no understanding her. She's
right.
a little, at least she's a little more mysterious than Susan Collins. I understand her.
Yeah, so the Hill report on this says Thune had little option but to let the Senate vote on releasing the Epstein files, something that Speaker Mike Johnson has worked hard to prevent in the House. And as it turns out, in the House, he's going to lose that fight because the Virginia 11 Democrat was elected.
Yep.
And that's one of the two signatures they still need. And on September 23rd, the late Representative Grijalva's daughter will be elected to that slot, and that'll be the second signature that they need.
Oh, well. There you go. So now he's he'll be stuck with this too. They'll use procedural tricks to get around it, or they'll just table the resolution. I guess, although, it's difficult to say, are they going to be able to line up all their Republicans with them? They may very well say, well, this would be interesting for them to say, no, well, let's save all our skins and not go on record if you can't handle voting no on this thing, and send it to the Senate and make them kill it. And then if they don't kill it, then, I'm sure they're already gaming it out. All right, so suppose the Senate passes it too. All right, now it's quote unquote law, right? Send it to the president. Is he going to sign it or are you going to veto it?
No,
all right.
Send it to, right, he'll veto it. But again, you're all on record. And
yes, it's worth
what
doing.
That means is that, it's one thing to not want this to come up if you're Mike Johnson. It's another thing to actively work to make this thing not come up in super dramatic fashion, like closing the House down so we don't have a vote,
which
and then losing.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the situation he's going to find himself in. That's just really weird.
Yeah.
Because when you do this, you're not supposed to lose.
No. And I'm surprised that
you can get mad at him for doing all these things, but you're not supposed to lose and be mad at him for doing all these things.
Yeah. Thune was not supposed to screw that up. I don't know.
Well, he did somehow. Right. You can go ahead and blame Schumer all you want, but the reason he did that is you left him an opening.
Yeah. Yep. Right. And I'm sure now that means Thune will just control things that much more tightly. But, that's the way of things.
Regular order.
Right. Exactly. That's why every leader who comes and saying we need to have regular order eventually says, you know what? Screw regular order.
Says, no, it's not a good idea. You just embarrassed me.
It's very difficult. And people will abuse it. I don't think this is a particularly abusive situation, but you'll end up with people filing 500 amendments or 500 versions of the same amendment over and over again just to waste time. You run into abuses all the time. Nobody sticks with regular order all the time. It can't be done. Not in this atmosphere.
So I just, again, for our listeners, especially for those who are not regular listeners.
Yes. What are you doing? Why aren't
you listening? There's a very important two, count them, two very important reasons David is on this show. Reason number 2.
What is this?
Is that he is a procedural expert. Reason number 1 is that it's his show.
Yeah, right. So I can't stop myself very well from doing this. Although, I was wondering, well, what is the reason I'm on this show? That's a good question.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. All right. Well, what a wild day. Okay. Well, we had
the count says two. We have two reasons for this.
You said count them, and we did do it.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad we can clear things up like that, and I can give everybody information.
And it's also part of the Epstein corner too. So
right?
it's like it's two things in one. So I just want to finish up in the 2 minutes we have left.
Please.
With Bloomberg.
You want to take the second hour? That's good.
I do not. Bloomberg.com.
Yeah.
I want to just stick to regular order here. Bloomberg.com has this spectacular, interesting piece, less here than meets the eye. Epstein's inbox, a trove of emails reveals Ghislaine Maxwell's secrets, by Jason Leopold and a host of other people. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 authors of this.
Wow, team
That's
effort.
How many people it takes to go into 18,000 emails.
Right.
The emails, part of a cache of more than 18,000 obtained by Bloomberg News, show Maxwell and Epstein were closer in many respects than either publicly admitted. Basically, too long, didn't read. Maxwell claims, including with speaking recently to the Department of Justice, that I didn't see anything wrong. I didn't even know him that well. I wasn't that involved. And winds up getting moved to, I
didn't know him.
Camp Pervert there, which is not a maximum security prison. But Maxwell opened at least one foreign bank account using one of his addresses, was a named director on one of Epstein's main revenue-generating companies, and traded stock in a company that were both invested in, details which haven't been previously reported. They discussed undergoing a shared fertility procedure long after Maxwell claimed she dissociated from him. They corresponded about discrediting women who raised allegations against them. And she planned to circulate compromising information on one of Epstein's sexual abuse victims. The emails include a spreadsheet itemizing 2,000 gifts, luxury items, and payments totaling $1.8 million, with notations indicating they were intended for Epstein's friends, business associates, and victims. The spreadsheet
friends and
included $35,000 watch that was earmarked for a Clinton aide, a $71,000 purchase at a Lexus dealership for an Epstein lawyer, and other items such as lingerie and chocolates for teenage girls who later lodged sexual abuse complaints against Epstein and Maxwell. Maxwell helped Epstein arrange many of the items, and it doesn't specify whether the recipients were ever offered or actually accepted the gifts. It's just a spreadsheet. Maxwell maintains she was kept in the dark about the details, but these emails, I'm paraphrasing now, basically sum up the fact that she knew a lot of this stuff. For example, when Epstein was under investigation in Miami, Epstein writes Maxwell, question, which one do you prefer, lewd and lascivious conduct or procuring minors for prostitution? He's got to cop something for a plea deal.
Yeah.
And he's asking her, what sounds better? What should I agree to?
Yeah, I guess so. Otherwise, it was
like she didn't know anything about it.
She wasn't asking her on a date, like, which one do you prefer for what we're going to do this weekend? Right? Okay. Which one do you think I should plead to? There's
not a lot of answers here, but it's so clear that she was so, dare I say it, intimately involved with his affairs.
Yeah, duh.
Any claim she has about not being a predator and not knowing about it are bogus. And how the hell is she at Camp Pervert in Texas instead of the max security prison that she belongs?
Because the pervert in chief thinks she will stay quiet somehow. Oh, well. Thanks, Greg. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Well, what am I going to do? An hour without the leveling influence and talkover partner of Greg Dworkin. I know we're going to get emails. And by the way, feel free. It doesn't mean you can't send emails that complain about the fact that we talk over each other. It's a legitimate issue. I mean, we're not doing it to get in each other's way, but it's a legitimate issue. People say, I'm trying to listen, and the sound quality is, while the sound quality is just fine, and we're putting out good product, and if you're listening in the car or whatever, even if you're listening on high fidelity headphones or whatever, it then occasionally becomes difficult to tell what the hell's going on. Just like the audio I was playing of AOC commenting on the House steps, the Capitol steps, on the shooting, and then hearing somebody else talking in the background, it becomes difficult to hear either one of them. I recognize that, but we only have an hour, believe it or not. It's like, we feel that's a short time, an hour together to discuss issues like the ones we were facing today. And we both have a lot to say. Now, granted, I have an extra hour to say it. So I do try to stay out of the way. And that sometimes, by the way, I've seen a couple of, I say complaint emails, but I don't think that's even a fair tag for them. But, emails making this observation that, some people, I have seen both kinds. I've seen emails that say, well, I can't understand it, why you allow this kind of interruption, and you can hardly hear what David's trying to say, and Greg talks all over it. Well, I have an extra hour at the end, so there's an issue of fairness there. Plus, of course, I want to hear what Greg has to say while he's got time to say it. But there's also that dynamic works both ways. I've also, by the way, seen comments, I think in reviews of the show, like on Apple Podcasts or wherever the place is, the show's being featured on one podcast platform or another, where people say there's this problem. The host keeps talking over this most interesting guest, Greg Dworkin, and why is that happening? Well, we talk over one another. We've explained it a number of times, and it's just it's like the live dynamic of the show, right? If it's just two people giving, monologues or taking turns, like in the scripted section, that's no fun, and it's not real. But yeah, hopefully we, get the message across and get the thoughts across in ways that you can grasp without having to rewind too much. But now, one touch button, give you 10 seconds rewind. It's not too much of a problem, I don't think. All right. Lots of other things to get to today, and I don't know in what order we ought to get to them. But I don't know. I guess really, I got to open up Instapaper. I got to open up the Blue Sky deck and try to get at what information we've got and things I've commented on. And I'm already looking at things that I'm going to need to save for tomorrow, for Friday. Now, housekeeping issues. One, not an issue, but this Friday, which is tomorrow, I guess I'll double check on everything just to make sure that everything is still on. But we had to postpone for 2 weeks. We had Ian Reifowitz was scheduled to come by, and he had a scheduling conflict, and we pushed it 2 weeks rather than one. So there are a lot of scheduling conflicts. Why are there so many scheduling conflicts for Ian Reifowitz? His book that we talked about last time was pending publication. I think they probably had the galley proofs. Is that what they call them? The last time we spoke, and now it's out, and so it's time to make the rounds and discuss it. And he's going to have some things to say, I think, if indeed he's still available to come on and discuss them, about Charlie Kirk. It may very well end up being the case that Ian's in tremendous demand elsewhere because of the events surrounding the death of Charlie Kirk. That would not be surprising, but, the escalating rhetoric of the right is, of course, right in his wheelhouse. He's like an academic expert in this. That's what the book is about. A slightly different angle on it, but that's what all of his latest political books have been. Not all, I shouldn't say that. I mean, there's the ones focusing on the Obama legacy and Obama's approach to politics, but even those, I think, are colored very differently inside, deeper inside the text. It's not supposed to be the main subject, but of course you can't really discuss the Obama approach to politics and the Obama legacy without noting that there was an entire political movement dedicated to, filling the air with as much eliminationist rhetoric about him and his supporting coalition as possible, so that it would make it more difficult for him to establish a political legacy. But it's clearly in his wheelhouse. The question is whether or not he'll have time for us tomorrow. So if all goes well, that should be happening tomorrow morning. Probably, I think our schedule says in the 9 o'clock hour, which would give us time to discuss a lot of other long reads. But, I guess with 1 hour, 2, I would guess at the most of the long reads. We'll decide whether or not that's the approach we want to take on Friday, see how events bear out today. Other issues, of course, as we mentioned in the story about the Senate, they're getting ready to break for the Rosh Hashanah break, which is not always what they called this break. But this is the time for the Jewish High Holy Days, which fall in this year, mid to late September through early October, and very often necessitate my own absence from the year. I take my own recess, but only for a day. Congress leaves for a week, but that's so just alerting you to the fact that that's going to happen too, and it may happen, mayhaps, m'lady, that I may find myself away during a different period of mid-October, actually just, like regular sort of travel opportunity. Okay. Whether I take it or not remains to be seen. I have booked no flights, but I'd like to take a day or two away from the microphone probably in mid-October. So, we'll still try and get you your money's worth during October for those of you who are monthly supporters of the program, which I thank you for, of course, and every once in a while I have new people to thank. It's been some time. If you've been thinking about becoming a subscriber, let's say via patreon.com, one of the more convenient platforms for it, now's the time. It's been a while since we've had somebody new to announce. I don't think since, since late or mid, actually not all that, beginning to mid-August, we had a few people to adopt the new option to buy a discounted annual membership as opposed to paying monthly. I think 15% off the top if you pay all up front. So if that's an option that's available for you or to you, we will make it available for you. Have I got that right? If you can do it, the opportunity is there. All right. So there you have it. So it might be a hole or two in our October coverage. Now back to the actual coverage of things we're talking about. Speaking as we were, I guess, about the scourge of political violence. As everybody's got something to say about that on social media and in today's papers and all of that. I just want to point out there's already been 1,000 counterexamples given. It is worth noting once again that, like, for instance, when the legislators and families in Minnesota were murdered, not only did the Republican Party at large and the right wing at large not treat that particularly respectfully, but just as a reminder, President Trump more or less refused to make any of the usual courtesy calls about those killings because he said, why should I do that? It's a waste of time. And now, of course, everybody has to be boo-hooing and wringing out their hanky about Charlie Kirk. And how dare you say anything like, he, did do an awful lot to enable the kind of political atmosphere where someone might be shot. How dare you, whatever. But again, even the most basic protocols of the president of the United States saying, political murder in my country, I better, I'll show up on the scene, and whether people believe that I'm sincere or not, I have to show up on the scene and say something or make some phone calls. No, I'm not even going to do it because screw them. And of course, he joked endlessly about Paul Pelosi, and all of his people did too. Anyway, so you're not going to get any sort of balanced approach to political violence out of them, nor, of course, if you can't get that, you have no hope of getting people to recognize the different forms of political violence that likewise should not be happening. Like, for instance, as it happens, this is developing each day, more shoes dropping, of course, about the attack on the motorboat off the coast of Venezuela, which right off the bat, I know, even when they were in most control of the story, Republicans and members of the Trump administration still did not tell a comprehensive or persuasive story about the attack on this boat. They simply said, they were drug dealers. Well, do you have any shred of evidence at all? Anything? No. Do you know who the 11 people who were killed were? Not really, but we are pretty sure. They were members of the Tren de Aragua gang, and they were all drug dealers. Do you have any of the drugs? Do you have any, surveillance photos that would establish their identities? Nope, nothing. We're just flatly saying it's true. Well, so that was never going to hold together. But even at that level, you were able to say, a right-thinking person would say, okay, but again, we're not at war with Venezuela. This poses an enormous problem. These are maybe Venezuelan, I don't know, civilians. They're not military. We're not in military conflict with Venezuela. The whole claim here is, well, they were Venezuelans, they were drug dealers, they were gang members, and they were in the middle of trafficking drugs to the United States, and those drugs would kill people in the United States. And so if they're from Venezuela and they're killing Americans, we must be at quote unquote war with them. And that's what passes for war. But, there's an actual definition and there's legality involved. Don't tell me about all that red tape. Americans have been killed. How dare you? What kind of anti-American person are you to say that people who are killing Americans aren't at war with us? Of course they're at war with us. War is about killing people from other countries, and they're from another country. So, that's his reasoning in all this, of course. Anyway, but what it actually is, of course, is a political stunt. Trump wanted some explosion videos to show him very strongly fighting the war on drugs. But we don't call it that. We call it a war, a regular war. And we're at war with this gang. And he wanted explosion videos because he's a war president, and war presidents have war videos. So he went and did this thing, and it was terrible. And, how could you defend drug dealers? I don't know. I don't know who they are. We don't know that they're drug dealers. But the point is, there was no authorization for this under American or international law. And he went and did it. And he did it for a political stunt to have video to show that he was strongly strong, which makes it political violence. That thing which the entire right wing just demanded we denounce. You got to denounce political violence. Okay, here's some political violence. We just established that everybody's got to denounce political violence. Here's some political. Oh, no, that's not political violence. That's war. Totally different, except it isn't. And as it turns out over the last couple of days, 2 articles, one I have from The Intercept and one I got to scroll down to try and find exactly where it was published. But in the last 2 days, we've seen, there it is, the New York Times. The first of them was the New York Times that basically established that, or claims to have established, I haven't read the article yet, that the boat suspected, I will read you the headline, boat suspected of smuggling drugs, suspected by somebody, is said to have turned before U.S. attacked it. And I think probably a better way of describing would be turned around, because apparently, remember, the whole claim is it's full of drugs and they're drug dealers and they're from Nicaragua, they're Venezuelan, and they were smuggling drugs to the United States. They were headed to the United States full of drugs. We don't know what it was full of because it's gone. And, well, what about that part about it heading toward the United States? What if it was headed toward Venezuela instead? Oh, well, would that color it for you? Would that change things and change your approach to things? Well, let's find out. I'll read you this story, and I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, should I spit out what The Intercept has, or should I just follow it up with what The Intercept has? The New York Times said the other day, September 10th, who's saying it? Charlie Savage, if that makes you sit up and take notice, and Helene Cooper, both suspected of smuggling drugs, as I said, is said to have turned before U.S. attacked it. Subheader, the Trump administration has argued that the summary killing of 11 people, by the way, that whole no due process thing, it doesn't count for Venezuelans. By the way, if you're big on insisting that screw people and their due process, we know who has done right or wrong here. But also you got to condemn the murder of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, if you're right, or I guess even if you're not right about who killed him and why, Charlie Kirk didn't get due process. Somebody thought he was guilty of something and thought, what the hell? We'll skip the whole process, due or otherwise, and I'll just execute my own judgment on them. As opposed to, well, let's make, if you think you've got a legal claim here, make it. Well, you don't. So you didn't. So you just went and did what you wanted to do, like they're doing on immigration. To hell with the due process. Well, sometimes the abandonment of due process takes victims that you care about, too. And maybe you shouldn't be out there saying, well, let's just eliminate everybody I don't like, because it'll have blowback. Anyway, there you have it. The Trump administration has argued that the summary killing of 11 people it accused of running drugs was legal under the laws of war. It just took them a couple of days to decide what it was legal under. They couldn't come up with anything. And then about 5 days later, they said, oh, yeah. Actually, it's legal under the rules of war, which don't apply because there's no war going on. All right. Here's what Charlie Savage and Helene have to say. A Venezuelan boat, you know about it, that the U.S. military destroyed in the Caribbean last week had altered its course and appeared to have turned around. I don't know why they left the word around out of the headline. Turned around before the attack started because the people on board had apparently spotted a military aircraft stalking it, according to American officials familiar with the matter. Does that matter? Should that matter? The right wing says no. That just means that they knew they were getting caught. But yeah, that means they were turning around. Were they running drugs to the United States? Nope. Not when you blew them up. They weren't. The military repeatedly hit the vessel before it sank. And that is really the point being made by the intercept part. So I had not read through this yet. I thought maybe the intercept actually adds some more facts to it. But that's another point to this. Not only did the vessel turn around, but the explosion video that Trump triumphantly got and shared on social media, murder video, didn't kill all the 11 people on board. It wasn't instantly vaporized. There were survivors to the attack. The American military turned around, looked to see, as they usually do, how'd we do? And then saw, hey, survivors. I don't know what methodology they used, whether they strafed them in the water or hit them with another drone attack, but they basically turned around and said, people survived that? Oh, well, let's go back and make sure they're dead. That's troubling, too. They were no longer running drugs to the United States. They weren't even headed toward the United States when you blew them up. Now they're just bobbing in the water. Presumably the drugs are gone, unless they're holding onto bales of floating drugs. That could be the case. I don't know. But, wow, that's worth pointing out. The military repeatedly hit the vessel before it sank, and then, of course, went back and shot for survivors. The officials added, speaking on condition of anonymity, of course, to discuss a sensitive matter, President Trump said he authorized the strike and claimed the boat was carrying drugs. The disclosures provide, he might as well have claimed that they were carrying ballots for Joe Biden on the thing, too, by the way. The disclosures provide new details about a military operation. It was a startling departure from using law enforcement means to interdict suspected drug boats. Legal specialists who have called it a crime to summarily kill suspected low-level smugglers as if they were wartime combatants said the revelations further undercut the administration's claim that the strike was legally justified as self-defense. If you're headed toward Venezuela, it's not. Mr. Trump announced the strike last week, saying it took place in international waters, so therefore it does. This is the Trump brain at work here. Well, it happened in international waters, so there's no law. No, there's law. Not the law of the United States, not the law of Venezuela, but there's law. Mr. Trump announced the strike last week, saying it took place in international waters, and it killed 11 people who he said were transporting drugs, quote, heading to the United States, and they may have initially been doing that. That's worth pointing out, sure. And were part of a Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua. He has not put forward evidence to support those assertions. Isn't that something? Who would have expected it from Donald Trump? But has said, quote, we have tapes of them speaking, but also says they have no tape of me speaking on Access Hollywood. That's all fake. Just, whatever. While the White House has not provided a detailed legal rationale, and why would it be detailed? Who cares about details when you're talking about legal rationale? It has put forward the outlines of a novel argument that using lethal military force was permissible under the laws of armed conflict to defend the country. From drugs, because 100,000 Americans die annually from overdoses. Are they from overdoses of drugs that come from Venezuela? Generally speaking, no. But whatever, who cares? Secretary of State Marco Rubio said people suspected of smuggling drugs toward the United States pose an immediate threat. Mr. Trump, in a letter to Congress, justified the attack as a matter of self-defense. Many legal specialists, including retired top military lawyers, have rejected the idea. Isn't that something? That Mr. Trump has legitimate authority to treat suspected drug smuggling as legally equivalent to an imminent armed attack on the United States. A drug boat that's not even heading to the United States. Isn't that basically the same as Pearl Harbor? Yeah, of course. Even if one accepted that premise for the sake of argument, and everyone loves to do things for the sake of argument. Charlie Kirk, for all his faults, was just doing things for the sake of argument. They added, if the boat had already turned away, that would further undermine what they saw as an already weak claim of self-defense. Right, exactly. Oh, stand your ground. I had a right to do that. Well, that's a matter of American law, not international law, for one thing. But you shot the guy in the back. Like, you have a right to stand your ground. And if he's retreating and running away and saying, you're right, you are exercising your right to self-defense. I recognize your right to self-defense. I no longer want to do this. Whatever it was I was threatening to do, I'm going to turn around and run away and leave. Well, but now this is George Zimmerman claim. These assholes always get away with it. So I'm going to shoot him because it's, you can't just change your mind and not commit a crime. Can't you, though? Shouldn't you, though? And even if you think you've got them dead to rights, that the point which they turn around, you don't say, well, now I think we should abandon our original plans to murder them all and interdict and arrest them all. Well, these always get away with it. Well, then go bust them. Go grab them. You got them in your sights. You got military force in the area. Surround them and round them up and then prove your point to everybody. No. They just wouldn't do it. That's very odd. If someone is retreating, where's the imminent threat then? Said Rear Admiral, communist, Rear Admiral Donald J. Guter, a retired top judge advocate general for the Navy from 2000 to 2002. Okay, that's not a tremendous amount of experience, but getting to be a top judge advocate general for the Navy is an accomplishment in itself. Where's the self-defense? They are gone if it ever existed, which I don't think they did. The reasons, I guess, is the they. Rear Admiral James E. McPherson, the top judge advocate general from the Navy from 2004 to 2006. Or I guess maybe they only served 2-year terms. I don't know. Maybe that would be wise. I'm not familiar. But 2 of them in a row that are 2 years as the top judge advocate general, who later served, by the way, McPherson did, in the first Trump administration in several prominent civilian military roles, including General Counsel of the Army, agreed. Again, this is Trump's General Counsel of the Army, not the current one. The current one is, I'm sure, a ghost buster with a blog. Anyway, I would be interested if they could come up for any legal basis, with any legal basis for what they did. He said, adding, if in fact you can fashion a legal argument that says these people were getting ready to attack the U.S. through the introduction of cocaine or whatever, if they turned back, then that threat has gone away. There's no long-distance cocaine threat. I know. Even fentanyl, which they say, oh my God, if you even think about it, you'll die. It's still got to be somewhat in close proximity, unless now it's, fentanyl is killing people on the astral plane. Imagine Trump saying that one. The White House did not directly address questions about the boat's maneuvers, because who cares? Or the nature of the strike, because who cares? Instead, repeating the administration's position on the attack. Mr. Trump acted in line with the laws of armed conflict to protect our country from evil narco-terrorists trying to poison our homeland, said Anna Kelly, a White House spokeswoman. Not even a shred of legal underpinning to that. Sean Parnell, the chief Pentagon spokesman, said, this strike sent a clear message. It did do that. If you traffic drugs towards our shores, or even towards your own shores, the United States military will use every tool at our disposal to stop you cold, unless it involves non-lethal tools at our disposal, in which case, no. The U.S. Coast Guard, which sometimes sometimes with help from the Navy, has frequently interdicted boats suspected of smuggling drugs in the Caribbean Sea, searched for illicit cargo, and, if its suspicions were accurate, arrested the people aboard for prosecution. Mr. Trump has long wanted to take much harsher steps against drug trafficking, including saying that drug dealers should get the death penalty, because he borrowed that one from Duterte in the Philippines. Oh, where it is. In his first term, he praised President Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines for doing an unbelievable job on the drug problem in the nation, that is the Philippines, where Mr. Duterte's government had approved the summary killing of suspected drug dealers. We have a little constitution thing that we used to think got in the way of that. But then it became legal to sack the Capitol if you didn't like it, and the Constitution went away. Mr. Duterte now faces charges of crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court over his drug war. So there you go. He did an unbelievable job on the drug problem. So I'm going to do the same job on the drug problem. Well, now he's facing charges of crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court. How you feeling about what you did? Oh, well, I did it the good way. After returning to office, Mr. Trump directed his administration to begin labeling various Latin American criminal gangs and drug cartels as terrorist organizations, taking advantage, basically, of exactly the loophole that we worried about when this authority was first handed to the president in the global war on terror, beginning with President George W. Bush. We basically saw this coming. This was the loophole that was left open. If you just leave it up to, well, all presidents are inherently reasonable people. He's not going to just do this to his political enemies. Yeah, he is. And here he is doing it right now. Wow, what a surprise. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue reading the New York Times account of the new information about the Venezuelan boat destroyed by American military forces in the Caribbean. As it turns out, turned around and headed back, I guess, presumably to Venezuela, if it really was ever from Venezuela. We just don't know anything. They haven't even bothered to do the basic briefing of why they believed any of the things that they said, and it may be because they don't believe any of the things that they said. But the point we were making as we exited for the break was that this is exactly what, at least I was speaking strictly for myself, I guess, although I'm sure that there are many people out there that agree. This was a worry of the manner in which we handed this sort of vague and shapeless authority to the president to determine who was a unlawful enemy combatant at the time when we were thinking about the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and terrorism, the global war on it, and basically, having assured everybody, well, assure all Americans that everything will be done on the up and up and it's very reasonable. This will only happen, will only bring the overwhelming force of the United States military to bear if the president, in all of his seriousness and wisdom, determines that the people being targeted are enemy combatants dedicated to an attack on, attempting to make an attack on the United States or American interests abroad even. And, how will you know? Well, even in the George W. Bush administration, they would make a claim of having intelligence that points to this, and they would share some version of it with people and say, this is what we were looking at when we made this decision. And the Trump administration has basically said, well, that's work, and we don't want to do that. But isn't it the case that the president can do anything that they want? And somebody with a little more brains might have said, I recall that there was a thing back in George W. Bush's, and to some extent even afterwards in the Obama days. Certainly people will want to point that out, and they'll be correct about it, that Obama very frequently would clear the military to make drone strikes, for instance, overseas, targeting in some cases people who had American citizenship but who were overseas. And the allegation was that they were part of a terrorist organization dedicated to making attacks on Americans and American interests abroad, and that there was an imminent danger. They were the kind of person that spent their life planning such attacks, and eliminating them was justifiable and for the best. But people had questions about that. Lots of people had questions about that. And but even the George W. Bush administration and then the Obama administration afterwards, and the Biden administration, I'm sure, had issues like that on its record as well, would make a showing of what they believed to be the intelligence behind the authorization of such an attack. And the Trump administration just doesn't appear interested in doing so. I don't know whether it's because they can't, or they want to keep it vague so that if they can get away, whatever that means, with this one, then it'll surprise no one if they try it again, or the focus becomes a little bit closer to home. Like, for instance, they may say, well, out in Aurora, Colorado, where Tren de Aragua has taken over an entire apartment building, suppose we blow that up. Well, couldn't there be collateral damage? Well, look, there's collateral damage with everything, but we're fighting a war here. Because why? Because we've said so. Because we say these people are from Tren de Aragua. And we say that Tren de Aragua is at war with us. And that's all that needs be said. That's the authorization you handed to the president. Now, normally they have a briefing and they give you some information on it, but we're not gonna. It doesn't say we have to. You just assumed we would. And we won't. So basically, not unlike Charlie Kirk, what the F are you going to do about it? And I don't know. It's hard to tell. What can you do about it? Back to the ordered thoughts from Charlie Savage, the other Charlie in our day, and Helene Cooper. We left off where? After returning to office, Trump directed his administration to begin labeling various Latin American criminal gangs and drug cartels as terrorist organizations, breaking with the tradition of limiting that status to violent groups that are motivated by ideology rather than illicit profit. That's supposed to be the differentiation between the two. Legally, such a designation permits sanctions like freezing a group's assets, but it does not create authorization to use military force against it. But, now you have to be talking to people who care about the limits of the law, and that just doesn't include Trump administration personnel. They're just not interested in it. In July, Mr. Trump signed a still secret directive instructing the Pentagon to use military force against some of the criminal groups his team had designated as terrorist organizations. And by the way, does it mean that he could designate certain criminal groups in the United States as terrorist organizations? Sure, why not? Does it mean that he could basically, the way his approach to it, let's also provide no information and look askance at people who ask for it? Could we declare anybody, the Democratic Party, people who listen to Kagro in the morning, as terrorist organizations? He could. Will he be able to get away with it? Maybe. I don't know whether they can raise enough interest in targeting us among the general population, but could he say so? Sure. Remember, a lot of people are going to wake up this morning with no idea who Charlie Kirk was, and they're going to find that the definition offered to them in the newspaper, either from opinion writers or the president, is the one that's going to stick. So, I don't know. They likewise know, they don't know anything about us. They know a little something about the Democratic Party, though. That will seem odd to them. So, in July, Trump signed a still secret directive instructing the Pentagon to go ahead and use military force against the people that he says are terrorists, just because I say so. The attack on the boat last week appears to signal an opening phase of operations stemming from that directive. Mr. Trump, in announcing the attack, posted a 29-second video on social media because he's dignified and doesn't have a tan suit. that edited together several clips, by the way, of aerial surveillance. It showed a speedboat cutting through the water with a number of people on board before an explosion. Oddly edited out of this. Why an edited version? One wonders. And is it because the full unedited version would show you the boat turning around? That would be pretty damning, actually, if it was part of the video, don't you think? But officials briefed on the strike said that the video does not tell the entire story. It can't because it's edited. It does not show the boat turning after the people aboard were apparently spooked by an aircraft above them, nor does it show the military making repeated strikes on the vessel even after disabling it, the officials said. Right, you could use the Simpsons meme. Stop, he's already dead. Except it's real. Mr. Trump's aides have boasted that the operation is only the beginning of a war against suspected drug smugglers. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who's now the War Secretary apparently, told reporters last week, "We smoked a drug boat." Now, he may actually have smoked the drugs on the drug boat. I don't know. He says he's sober, but I'm not sure. Just to be cool, because the kids like to call it this, we smoked a drug boat, and there's 11 narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean. And when other people try to do that, they're going to meet the same fate. So they're very open about it. Adding to the legal controversy is uncertainty over what standards, if any, the Trump team has set for the strength of the intelligence about who and what is on a boat for the U.S. military to summarily kill everyone aboard. I butchered it a little bit, but you want to hear it again? Adding to the legal controversy is uncertainty over what standards, if any, the Trump team has set for the strength of the intelligence about who and what is on board of any boat for the military to summarily kill everyone on board. How strong does the evidence have to be? What sort of stuff do we have to know? Nothing. I'll just tell you when you should blow up a boat. And then why? Don't ask why, but if you need to know, because there's drugs on it. Well, what drugs? If you don't blow up this goddamn boat right now, we're going to blow you up. You understand me? Yes, sir. I guess we'll do it. Mr. Trump joked last week, and this is a time for joking, as everyone knows. He joked last week that not just drug smugglers, but also fishermen may now think twice about going to sea in the region. How do you like that? This, by the way, comes on the heels of finding out that fishermen in North Korea were all killed by Navy SEALs trying to pull off a stupid clandestine stunt to get one up on Kim Jong-un, which may or may not be a laudable goal, but killing all the local fishermen, not so much. But apparently he thinks that's really funny. All the fishermen should be scared too, because we might kill you. What if we think you have drugs on board? I think everybody that saw that is going to say, I'll take a pass, Mr. Trump said. I don't even know about fishermen. They may say, I'm not getting on the boat. I'm not going to take a chance and feed my family. Oh, yeah, well, whatever. One open question is where the boat was headed. Like, we still don't... America. Where? Why? When? What are the logistics? Mr. Rubio initially told reporters last week that it was probably headed toward Trinidad and Tobago, one of those and countries that Trump doesn't, or we imagine Trump doesn't like, or some other country in the Caribbean, because there are a couple of them. But administration officials have since characterized it as, destined for the United States. Reason? Because it looks bad if it was really meant to be heading somewhere else. All right. Well, that's enough for me. Another is what it was carrying. Some have expressed doubts that a vessel of this size would need, remember this part, an 11-member crew. Senator Rand Paul, a Kentucky Republican who has called it, quote, despicable and thoughtless to glorify killing people accused of crimes without trials, has argued that if there were drugs, it was more likely cocaine than fentanyl, the drug mostly responsible for those large numbers of overdoses that we mentioned before. On Tuesday, Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Armed Forces Committee, told CNN that the administration had provided no evidence, none, that the boat was taking drugs to the United States. If there's a civilian boat that's suspected of anything, particularly in international waters, you have to make an attempt to stop the boat, he said, describing what he said was supposed to be the standard rules of engagement. You only fire, really, if fired upon. The legal question is whether Mr. Trump can simply choose to reject that approach and shift the problem of drug smuggling from law enforcement rules to the harsher framework of wartime rules, especially when Congress has not authorized any armed conflict with gangs and cartels like Tren de Aragua. Like when it was the global war on terror, you could at least point to, well, there's the AUMF. There were two of them, authorizations for the use of military force. One has been repealed since, and guess what? I just read a report the other day. I'll have to read through it because it seems like it would be a bigger deal in talking about this, and it hasn't really gotten much attention. Did they just repeal the other one? Maybe it takes a signature or some signal as to whether or not there's going to be a veto or something. But this would have been, of course, an authorization for the use of military force to fight terrorists. And Trump is just saying, well, that's why we're calling them terrorists. But that one might be rug pulled eventually too. And it certainly should be. This is a huge abuse of the AUMF, which also was called out at the time. This is overbroad and vague. And you're going to have a president who's not as, quote unquote, responsible as George W. Bush, or for that matter, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, you name it. There's going to be a president who just says, I can just say they're terrorists, then I'm gonna. Well, you can't just say that. It doesn't say it in the law what you have to provide, but you can't just say that. You're the president of the United States. You can't wear tan suits. You can't paint your face orange. You can't just say they're terrorists and literally leave it at that. Oh, can't you? What if you do? What's your plan? If somebody just does, I don't need to have a plan because nobody ever will. Well, now someone is. What's your plan? Well, now I can't have a plan because they might say I'm a terrorist. Good plan. Well, that went well. Okay, so, right. Jeffrey Korn, next up, a retired uniformed lawyer who was the Army's senior advisor for law of war issues, said he believed Mr. Trump's and Mr. Hegseth's order was not justified as an act of self-defense. He expressed concern that what he saw was an apparently illegal order was passed down through the military chain of command and carried out. And remember, that was another of the safety backstops on all this. Well, the armed forces are well trained. They know that they should not be executing obviously illegal orders. Yeah, and a lot of them probably do know that. I don't know whether those guys forgot about it or they made sure that the people assigned to this task aren't those kinds of people, or it's actually not true and the military is not particularly adept in real time at figuring out across the board what are legal and illegal orders and refusing to carry them out. The apparent turning of the boat before the attack began, he said, reinforced that judgment. I think it's a terrible precedent, but by a terrible president. But anyway, we've crossed a line here, and that's it. We made it to the end. Does the Intercept's version add new information? I think it tells it in a different way. So perhaps we'll take a quick look at that one. Is this the same one, Scott, that you sent me on the side? Maybe when I mentioned it sounded like I didn't have it, but let me see which one you sent me and see if it's the same headline and same story that I've already got. Yeah, I think it is. U.S. attacked boat near Venezuela multiple times, and they say it right in the headline, to kill survivors. Nick Terse is the author of this piece. Subheader reads, American officials said the repeat drone strikes were carried out, now I know the methodology, by Special Operations Command, and more attacks could come soon because they're pretty sure this is A-OK and they're ready to do it again. Watch out. People on board the boat off the coast of Venezuela that the U.S. military destroyed last Tuesday were said to have survived an initial strike, according to two American officials familiar with the matter. They were then killed shortly after in a follow-up attack. The boat was under U.S. surveillance for a significant period of time. Those on board apparently spotted the U.S. aerial assets and altered the vessel's course. U.S. officials said the boat appeared to have turned back toward shore, after which it was subjected to multiple strikes. Three sources, including Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, said the boat was attacked by one or more drones. A very small number of Senate and House staffers separately received highly classified briefings about the attack on Tuesday. No senators or House members were in attendance, though. People familiar with the briefings told The Intercept. 2 officials familiar with the strike were left with the impression that more attacks on the Caribbean would be forthcoming in the weeks ahead. Multiple sources say that Special Operations Command, or SOCOM, conducted the lethal operation. This is considered highly unusual given all the other military assets based in the region. Colonel Ali Weisskopf, SOCOM's Director of Public Affairs, would not comment on the command's involvement in the attack. "We don't have anything for you," she told The Intercept. Maybe she may have said, "We don't have anything for you," but I don't know. Probably not. In response to questions from The Intercept, the chief Pentagon spokesperson, Sean Parnell, sent this statement: "Narco-terrorists who poison the American people will find no safe harbor in international waters or anywhere in our hemisphere. This strike sent a clear message. If you traffic drugs towards our shores," and, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, I don't know, "the United States military will use every tool at your disposal to stop you cold." Or if you have a boat and you're headed toward the United States, basically. President Donald Trump said he authorized the attack and posted an edited video to social media last week showing the 4-engine speedboat cutting through the water with numerous people on board. An explosion and destroys the boat. Trump said the strike killed 11 people, whom he characterized as, quote, narco-terrorists. The administration has offered no evidence to support these assertions. We heard that. Then we saw the Secretary of State's comment on it. Same thing repeated here. Brian, Finucane, maybe F-I-N-U, Finu, C-A-N-E, Kane. Finucane, I have no idea whether that's anything close to the pronunciation. I can imagine 10 different ones. A former State Department lawyer who's an expert in counterterrorism issues and the laws of war said that the new details, while horrific, did not change the underlying legal issues. This isn't a defense of it, though. The U.S. president is asserting the power to engage in the premeditated killing of people outside of armed conflict, he told The Intercept. There is no evidence that these people were lawful targets. The Trump administration hasn't established that there was an armed conflict, hasn't established that the law of armed conflict governed any such hostilities, and hasn't established that the people aboard the vessel itself, or its cargo were lawful targets under the law of war. Seems like a big problem, then, to use the military against them. Members of Congress from both parties have expressed alarm about the attack. Rand Paul told The Intercept that while he didn't oppose the use of drones in war, he objected to the U.S. summarily killing people without due process. Isn't that something? During my time in the Senate, I have been the foremost critic of drones being used on civilians, especially Americans, said Paul, a member of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. The recent drone attack on a small speedboat over 2,000 miles from our shore without identification of the occupants or the content of the boat is in no way part of a declared war and defies our longstanding Coast Guard rules of engagement, which include warnings to halt, non-lethal force to capture, and ultimately lethal force in self-defense or in cases of resistance. Last week, a high-ranking Pentagon official who spoke to The Intercept on condition of anonymity said that the strike in the Caribbean was a criminal attack on civilians and said that the Trump administration paved the way for it by firing the top legal authorities of the Army and Air Force earlier this year. Everybody worried about that. Why are they firing all the top legal experts in the military? Well, here's the answer. The U.S. is now directly targeting civilians. Drug traffickers may be criminals, but they aren't combatants, the War Department official said. They call it War Department here. When Trump fired the military's top lawyers and the rest saw the writing on the wall, and instead of being a critical firebreak, they're now a rubber stamp complicit in this crime. Well, it's a slightly different take. But also a good reminder that, yeah, they went back and hit them again when they saw that there were survivors. Now, I mentioned to you that somewhere in Instapaper here, I put aside a story, there it is, from Politico, and it's a long one too, but you would think, I don't know, I feel like it would be getting more attention if it was what I thought it was. And I think I'm looking, who's in this picture here, by the way? This photo. There's no caption to this photo, but is it Chip Roy? I I thought, yeah, well, I don't know if that's, I thought he looked slightly different than that, but that may have been who was giving comment over AOC's shoulder in the other gaggle, by the way. I'm now looking at that. I didn't match the name with the face, but I guess now that I see it again with an identification, I think it doesn't say in the caption, but he's mentioned right up top. So that may have been Chip Roy in the background. So that should make for some interesting isolated audio if we can get it. But very quickly, House votes to repeal Middle East war laws. This is just from yesterday in Politico. The vote is a win for war powers advocates who contend the laws allow for presidential abuses of power. A bipartisan coalition of lawmakers voted to repeal the decades-old laws that authorize the U.S. to go to war in the Middle East. Lawmakers, in a 261 to 167 vote, approved an amendment to major defense legislation. Remember, everybody's considering the National Defense Authorization, that would rescind the war powers laws, which passed in the run-up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq and the 1991 Gulf War. I didn't realize that one was still around. The vote is a small win for war powers advocates who contend the laws need to go to prevent abuses of presidential power and reclaim Congress's authority over use of the military. Well, I mean, I would add, in theory, that's what it would do. I don't think that this president is at all interested in any limitations at all. So, well, repealing the authorization would make it more difficult to argue legally that the president has this power. This president will just say, well, I still do. It's inherent in my Article 2 says I can do anything I want. And the current Attorney General of the United States is on record 100 times agreeing. Anyway, the House Defense Bill won't address broader concerns that President Donald Trump is freely wielding military force, including a strike last week on a suspected drug smuggling vessel in the Caribbean, though. The rollback will tower over negotiations between the House and Senate on a compromise defense policy bill. Both chambers have voted to repeal the Iraq War authorization in recent years under Democratic leadership, although no legislation has ever been enacted. That's interesting. The amendment, sponsored by conservative Representative Chip Roy of Texas and House Foreign Affairs Ranking Member Gregory Meeks of New York, along with other lawmakers in both parties, won the support of 49 Republicans and 212 Democrats. That is to say, all the Democrats. The measure had an unlikely path to passage. The proposal was initially left out of a package of amendments to the defense bill proposed by the House Rules Committee, but Democrats won an incredibly rare vote in the committee to secure a debate on it. Representatives Ralph Norman of South Carolina, Republican, and Morgan Griffiths of Virginia, and Roy, all three Republicans, broke ranks with fellow Republicans to make it possible. Remember, this used to be the Speaker's Committee. That's the way it used to be referred to. We don't need to have Congress effectively modern day declaring war and leaving it in place for a quarter of a freaking century, or in this case, 34 years, Roy said. We can do better. Meeks hinted at a future struggle in negotiations with the Senate, saying he was, quote, prepared to fight to get this over the finish line. Opponents of repealing the law warned of unintended consequences. Representative Joe Wilson, Joe Uli Wilson, or is this a different one? Republican of Florida. I thought Joe Wilson, Uli Wilson was, what, South Carolina? Is this, did he leave Congress and did he come back in Florida, or is this a totally different Joe Wilson? I really don't know. That's actually, I didn't keep tabs on Joe Wilson for his entire life, but let's see. Now, do I have it wrong? I don't know. Let's see. Joe Wilson, representative from South Carolina. Yes. Maybe they just, yeah. All right. I mean, I don't know. Did they label him wrong as Florida in Politico? I don't see any break in service, and I don't see that he's moved to Florida either. I think it's just a mistake. Okay. Joe Wilson, who's from South Carolina, argued doing so, that is repealing this law. And I guess, are we talking about, did this one repeal the 1991 Gulf War AUMF. Wow. Anyway, I'm not certain. But opponents of repealing the laws warned of unintended consequences. Joe Wilson argued doing so would tie the president's hands in going after Iranian puppet militias in Iraq. I mean, I don't think so. And I don't think that's as big an issue as, what he's been doing with the Venezuelan boat recently anyway. But I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe over time, there's more going on with Iranian-backed puppet militias in Iraq. But I actually should be objecting to the first part of that. Well, repealing it would tie the president's hands and going after Nothing ties this president's hands. He just does what he wants to do and dares Congress. Well, like Charlie Kirk says, what the F are you going to do about it? Nothing is the answer. And so what can I tell you? The House is expected to pass the bill on Wednesday. That would have been yesterday. Did they take care of business? I don't know. But Republicans will likely do so largely on their own after adopting a series of culture war amendments that House Democrats warned they won't support. So there were 212 Democratic votes for the repeal of the AUMF and adding it into the bill, but then there was so much other garbage added to the bill as culture war amendments that Democrats likely won't show up in support of final passage. Okay, so I think that's actually it here, and I guess that's it. I said it was a long article, but in fact it's a roll of several articles strung together. One of which, by the way, is that Massey's Epstein discharge petition inches closer to 218 signatures as newly sworn in, they decided not to delay him, newly sworn in Representative James Walkinshaw became the 2017th House member to sign the discharge petition on Wednesday night. So that storyline holds. And I don't know, I'm going to do a little more reading on which AUMFs ended up getting voted for repeal. But I guess the history of these repeals are that they get debated, voted on, adopted in the House and or Senate, but somehow don't make it into legislation. So no actual repeal of these things. Did I read that correctly? Hopefully we'll catch up on that. Tomorrow we'll be back, and if all goes well, and I'll check in with Ian, we'll speak with him tomorrow. We got more long reads to get into. There are some fascinating ones, and I am sure there'll be more fallout to add to our collection of stories that we discussed today. We will see you tomorrow. Justice Putnam takes it from here.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know what's distracting Justice, but I guess maybe the old button didn't get pressed today, so I don't have a preview to share with you for today, but I imagine we all have a pretty good idea what Justice is going to be talking about, unless, of course, the whole thing has freaked him out tremendously. But we'll see you tomorrow, regardless.